The regions that we pick in leagues is going to be one of the most important decisions that we're going to make. Forget one small detail and you might end up not being able to train one skill efficiently, or to be able to complete a lot of the tasks in an area. So rather than tell you what regions I think are best, this is all the information you're going to need to choose the regions that you want to pick, including all of the pros and cons. Before I come to combat, we need to make sure that our picks have a good way to train all of these skills at low, mid and high levels to be able to do it efficiently, but the starter region does cover a lot of them for us. Now included in the starter region is not only Misthalin but Karamja, Fossil Island, Dorgish Khan, the Isle of Souls and Xanaris, which between them have a ton of content. We can mine low level ore in Lumbridge and Varric, and we have coal, mithril, addy and rune on Fossil Island, plus the blast mine, covering the mining skill entirely, which obviously covers us for smithing as well. Woodcutting is covered too. We got willows and draenor, maples and yews on the Isle of Souls, plus sullyseps on Fossil Island, and the fossils that you can get from this area in total can get you around 2 million leagues experience as well, which is absolutely huge if you do hit a bottleneck when skilling where you can't train one skill efficiently. Again, having all the trees that you need for woodcutting also covers you for fire making and fletching too, plus there are teaks and mahoganies on the Isle of Souls for construction. When we start out, Druidic Ritual is automatically completed as well. You can get packs of vials of water on Karamja, leaving just the herbs and the secondary ingredients, and with so many different ways to get those, training herb lore won't be an issue. I don't think there's any regions where you can get stuck behind getting herbs and secondaries. We also have a Slayer Master in Edgeville and Shiloh Village, covering us completely for Slayer. For prayer, you can simply play the Soul Wars minigame and use the Zeal to get prayer pretty quickly, or there's even Dragons in Brimhaven Dungeon and Fossil Island if you want to build an altar in your player-owned house. Farming, in regards to leveling up at least anyway, is completely covered too, because there's a tree patch in Lumbridge and one in Varric. Although again, picking areas with herb patches will make training herb lore and getting useful potions much easier. But purely in regards to leveling up, passively planting trees will be enough to get you to 99. Hunter can also be trained all the way up to 99 in the starter region too. On Fossil Island, there are Crimson Swifts to get you started, which you can catch at level 1, or you can simply do the natural history quiz in Varric Museum to get you 5,000 experience, which will take you straight to level 20. From that point, you can simply get seeds from the Draenor market, and once you have access to Clockworks, you can do birdhouse runs all the way up to level 99. Fishing's another one that can be done without any other regions too. Lumbridge covers you at low level, and the Isle of Souls has lobsters and shark fishing spots as well. And you can buy most of your fishing equipment in Shiloh Village, which is automatically unlocked at the start of leagues. Plus you can get lobster pot from either charter ship in Karamja and Brimhaven, and there's a big net spawn on Fossil Island too. So that just leaves 4 skills. Now crafting can be done in the starter region, but pretty inefficiently, and for that reason I'm not going to mark it off here. The best way to train by far this leagues will be to simply buy gems from a crafting shop, because there's going to be unlimited stock in shops again. So all you do is you cut them and sell them straight back. And this is going to be so much quicker than training crafting any other way, that you want to get at least one region with a gem stall, or even a boss that you intend to farm anyway that drops a ton of crafting supplies. An alternative method that you can do is if we get Fire Sale again and you choose it, there is a gem store which needs Tokkul, but with Fire Sale you can get as much Tokkul as you want by simply buying a ton of runes free in Varric and then selling them to the rune store over there. For agility, we can start in Draenor now that this is a level 1 course. We have Varric at mid level, and we even have a high level course. Literally no one ever does the Dorgish Khan agility course, myself included, but according to the wiki this is over 50,000 experience per hour, which is actually pretty competitive compared to other rooftop courses, so we are completely covered for agility as well. Men, farmers and knights cover us pretty well for thieving at low level and mid levels. After that we can then move on to the rich chests in Dorgish Khan, and then finally thieve from Tazar at level 90, meaning we don't need to worry about that skill either. Rune crafting is probably the only real pain, but we can at least train it at a low level. Last time we started leagues at level 5, so we could at least go to the water altar in the south of Lumbridge, then move on to earth runes by the Varric sawmill at level 9. After that, rune crafting is a little bit of a pain to train. You definitely want to have at least one good region to train it, such as the desert, which will open up the Guardians of the Rift, or simply pick the last recall sigil again, which makes rune crafting so much faster. So when picking your regions, that's all you really need to worry about. A good rune crafting method and a gem store will help you train the only 2 skills that the starter region doesn't cover. Combat, however, is the complete opposite to skilling, where the starter regions don't really give us much at all. It does have us covered for low level items, but for mid level and higher level stuff there's only really a few items. We can get Tazar weapons plus Onyxes, which gives us access to Furies, plus the Region Bracelet too, and they may even give us access to the chest in the Lumbridge basement like they did in Deadman for at least some of the gloves there. Melee weapons would be quite decent, but we can't get a zombie axe since currently the Defender of Varric doesn't auto-unlock, plus most of its sub-quests require other regions to be completed too, and although we can access the Abyssal Sire for the whip and the bludgeon, Ancients makes killing the boss so much faster, so that probably isn't worth doing without them either. Unfortunately, we can't get the Dragon Crossbow, which requires Fremennik to be unlocked to automatically complete Dragon Slayer 2, which gives us access to the Rune Dragons. So for the regions that we want to choose, weapons and armour are definitely a priority. So starting out with the region that almost everybody picked last time, the desert. And even with the changes, that means we can now get a T-Bow, Shadow or Scythe from any raid this league's. The more I think about the desert, the more it convinces me that it's going to be almost as popular still. To start off with, it gives you access to Ancients, and without it, the Abyssal Sire and all of the achievements that come with that will be much harder without this region. It also gives us access to Leviathan, so not only does the region give us the T-Bow, Shadow and Scythe, it gives us the Lightbearer, with the ring slot being one of the hardest ones to fill in leagues, the Fang for bosses that aren't weak to slash, and the Scythe, Missouri for the best range armor in the game, a Mage offhand, and Full Virtus from Leviathan. And it's not just combat that this region is good for, it has a gem store with both sapphires and emeralds, giving you the best way to train crafting. The Calphite Queen drops a dragon pickaxe for faster mining, it has the fastest mining method in the entire game, 3 ticking granite, plus the Giant's Foundry, Temperos, Pyramid Plunder and the Mage Training Arena are better ways to train fishing, thieving, magic and smithing, because usually those skills on their own get you very few points, but training those same skills here will give you all of them points as usual, plus a ton of other points at the exact same time, for getting certain rewards that you get from doing them anyway. It also completely fixes the rune crafting issue we have, as we have access to the Guardians of the Rift, a way to train rune crafting all the way up to 99 and we get additional points to boot. So given what we need in the regions that we pick, it ticks so many boxes, it's going to be really hard not to pick this one again. There's even a few small benefits, like the Shanty Pass selling unlimited bronze bars to get you started and get you a quick 30 to 40 smithing levels. It's got a Tanner too if you have a boss that drops a lot of hides, or you can simply kill blue dragons in the Isle of Soul starter region and craft some D-hide armor to get you started with your range gear. The only real downside that I can see in this area is whilst it's a great pick early on, you can go and do Giant's Foundry, Temperos and so on, get plenty of points from it and unlock your next region. If you do pick it early, there isn't anything that you can kill early on to help your gear progression that much, apart from what you get in the major arena. Most creatures in the desert have a pretty horrendous drop table, so picking the desert first means you'll pretty much have the same gear you unlocked in the desert when you first came here to when you pick your next region. And then on the other side, if you pick the desert as your second or third unlock, you'll already have trained most of the skills that this region is extremely good for in order to get those points, which feels like a little bit of a waste. Still an absolutely amazing region though, and just a very small dilemma. Next, my favourite region, and I'm not even a PKer, but the Wilderness is just amazing for supplies. Because it's designed to incentivize players into going to it, you get the benefit of all of that without hardly any PKers. Since every death is safe here, there's not much point in killing other people. You generally only get a few other people trying to kill others, testing out PvP builds and leagues and so on, or occasionally taking over a few of the busier spots. Now there weren't many places that happened last year, but if it ever became really popular, I would worry that that could become a big problem. This region though makes up for it because it will save you needing certain relics, and not many areas can make that claim. You get an insane amount of alcohols to the point where you can buy absolutely anything you want from a shop, making the use of fire sale pretty much irrelevant. The extra resources that you get from endless harvests aren't necessary in this region due to all of the supply drops that you can get. The rogues chests are such good XP, 330,000 per hour normally, that with the league's boost 99 will take just a few hours, and add in the wilderness agility area at just 52, which is as much XP as the level 70 and 80 courses, which you're going to want to do regardless just for the supplies. Make Trickster, a relic that I personally absolutely love last leagues, not really that necessary either. And that isn't the best part of the wilderness either. Whilst in other regions players are struggling for some supplies, herbs, planks, secondary ingredients, cannonballs, super compost, food, prayer potions, enchanted bolts, antidotes, rune bars, addy bars, crafting supplies, tree seeds, you absolutely name it, and this region gives you it by simply doing what you're going to do anyway. Killing the bosses, Revs, Slayer, the Agility Course, or Rogue's Den all give you a ton of supplies. It also solves one of the problems that we got by giving you access to the Rune Crafting Abyss, allowing you to train one of the few skills in the first region that doesn't cover you, and it also has the Chaos Temple unlocking the best way to train prayer. It does, however, though, have one major downside, a reason so big that for all of those positives, it may not be worth taking this region. Almost all of the best weapons and armor you get in this region are absolutely terrible outside of it. Picking the Wilderness is like choosing to have just 2 regions to get all of your gear and your weapons for the bosses in the other 2 regions you pick, because the Revenant weapons aren't very good outside of it. You can get the Voidwaker, Dagonhai set, Tyrannical and Treasonous Rings, plus Odium and Malediction wards, but apart from the wards, you don't want to be doing tasks that require you to kill other bosses hundreds of times with that as your best gear. That could all change though if they release the relic that they used in Last Deadman. The Sigil of Revoke Limitation allows Revenant weapons their 50% damage and accuracy buff outside of the Wilderness, making them competitive with some of the best weapons in the game. However, even then, that depends on what other relics that it's paired with. Anything decent, and most players probably won't choose the Wilderness. There is though the Echo bosses, and each region will have one boss that's buffed up a little bit more than usual, and it drops a weapon or a piece of equipment that's just below its current best in slot. That could have a big impact here, especially if you added it onto Revenant weapons to allow them to be used outside of the Wilderness, and that really would make this region worth considering. Fremennik is the opposite to the Wilderness. On the surface there aren't that many reasons to pick it, but there is one, and that makes it one of the best regions. Now don't get me wrong, this region isn't all bad. It's the only region to unlock the Dagonoth Kings, which gives us the Dragon Axe and more importantly the Dagonoth Rings. Plus the only real alternatives to those rings you probably won't get until much later in leagues. For example, the Brimstone Ring requires 95 Slayer and the Lightbearer requires completion of the Tombs of Amaska. So by not choosing this region, you pretty much sacrifice one slot for at least a large part of leagues. It also has Miscellanea, and combined with Fire Sale, which is essentially a way to get unlimited GP, you can put 7.5 million into the coffer straight away and start picking up whatever skill and supplies that you need straight from here. The region also unlocks Dragon Slayer too, and without it, any Ruined Dragon tasks that we get in the first starter region, we won't be able to complete. It unlocks the Secrets of the North, giving you the Phantom Musper and the Duke, another of the Desert Treasure 2 bosses, giving you full access to Virtus as well as the Mage's Ring. When we unlock the region, we can then also claim a pair of Ice Gloves, so you don't have to go to another region and you can do the Blast Furnace here. This is of course one of the fastest ways to train smithing in the game, and 99 here would take just a few hours to do with the highest leagues multipliers. Killing Vorkath will also let you train prayer much faster since it drops superior dragon bones. It also has a very useful drop table of both tree seeds for leveling farming as well as herb seeds for making potions much easier to obtain. Vorkath also drops a ton of bolt tips, dragon bolts unfinished, grapes, adios, magic logs, food and much more that saves you a lot of time having to gather the material yourself. The Phantom Musper is also very similar and has a lot of the same drops, but also has teak planks and pure essence too, which sounds trivial, but not having a good way to get planks or pure essence this league would really suck. It also has the Astral Altar here too to train rune crafting, as well as unlocking the entire Lunar spellbook. The Magic Imbue spell in particular allows you to create combination runes without using a talisman, which will give you some of the best possible XP in rune crafting at the Earth Altar just by the Sawmill, especially when you combine this with the Last Recall Sigil. Overall, in general, I think this region just feels a little bit underwhelming, and similar to the Wilderness, there isn't many gear upgrades. Don't get me wrong, the rings are great, plus the Virtus, but outside of that there's only a few other things, like the Natus Not Face Guard. The shields from Vorkath are pretty irrelevant with all of our combat buffs that we get in leagues, although the God Books are a decent alternative if you're not picking other regions that give you good offhand. This region though is usually picked by those that are competing for the top spot, because it has something that most areas don't. Small regions like this have less content, so the tasks that we get are usually based around the same content. Last time, for example, for the DKs, we had equip a Warrior Ring, a Bee Ring, Archer's Ring, Mage Ring, equip all of those rings, complete the combat achievements for these bosses, defeat all 3 50, 150 and 300 times, defeat all 3 without leaving, equip a Mud Battle Staff, use the Dragon Axe special attack, and the thing is, realistically, if you kill 300 of each of these, you complete all of the other tasks anyway, plus you also get the rare drops needed for the Rock Shell, Skeletal and Spined Armour. That is 1,640 points for bosses that can be killed at mid-level pretty easily with those league buffs that we get. And that rarely happens in larger areas where the same amount of tasks is usually spread over multiple bosses and you gotta kill each one hundreds of times for the exact same points. Varlamore is the complete unknown in terms of task leagues, but I think having played various leagues for a long time, we can presume a few things about getting points here. It's probably going to be very good for giving you tasks that give points and level up skills at the same time. For example, the Hunter Guild will likely give you points for completing a certain amount of Hunter Rumours, plus for catching various creatures as you level up, which you naturally do completing the rumours anyway. The agility course is exactly the same, and you'll likely get points for turning in the termites that you use with Wormtongue for rewards, plus the usual points you get anyway for using various shortcuts. This is a common theme across Varlamore, including mixology and potential thieving from houses, if they do add in points for that as well. Combat in the region is decent as well, and the Perilous Moons gives you a full set of mage, range and melee equipment, and a weapon for each set to boot. It can be done at mid-level, and the dungeon provides an easy way to get potions and food, so you don't have to worry about sourcing them either. But Orvis has also been moved to this region, so now you can get a full set of Virtus robes as well, and it's probably going to be one of the best areas for prayer too. Most activities here give blessed bone shards passively, and all you need to do is go and buy some jugs of wine in Tirannwn Market, and then offer them for a ton of prayer XP. Over time, skill in here will probably get you enough bone shards to make you a very high prayer level. The region also has Sunfire runes, and you'll get plenty of splinters too to create them in the first place from things like the Colosseum, giving you a good way to train runecrafting at the same time. The Colosseum as well has some useful items, but the best gear by far is the Quiver, which is currently the best in slot for range in the game. It also has the new boss, which drops the Dragon Hunter wand and the Tome of Earth. So outside of the regions with raids, you'd have to say this is probably one of the best areas for gearing up. But what are the downsides to the region? Well, there are a few, but the one major one that I can think of from what I can see is that most of the training methods here don't give very good XP, but if you want the points from the region, you're going to have to do them regardless. Mixology is around 55,000 XP per hour, and high level potions can give you as much as 300,000 XP per hour, obviously not including the boost we get from leagues. And whilst Hunter Rumours gives you bonus XP, some of the tasks give you terrible XP, and overall you get less than simply catching chins. The same goes for agility, which is around 35,000 XP per hour, as this was meant to be an AFK method, and thieving here is only half the XP of some of the best methods that you can do, and only a quarter of the XP that you can get from Rogue's chests in the Wildy. I do think though it's a good first region to pick, get your prayer up, give you a set of every different armour to take into your second region, plus at low level those XP rates aren't that bad, and you can find better training spots later in different areas. Tirannwn, the one area I think is just different to anything else, and I always find it hard to build a case for this region. Zulrah does have some great weapon and armor drops for sure, and the blowpipe is one of the highest DPS weapons in the game against low defense creatures, and with League's relics often increasing your accuracy, it makes it even better. Plus, even the standard drops here are very good, and will sort you out with a ton of useful skill and supplies, saving you countless hours farming them otherwise. The Gauntlet also gives you crystal armor, and the Bowfer, which whilst it's not a T-bow, it's always good everywhere, whereas a T-bow tends to be either amazing or terrible. You also get access to crystal tool seeds, speeding up the training of 3 of the slowest skills in the entire game by a little bit, and the area also opens up divine potions. Volcano is also another method which feels like double points. You get points from doing it, which levels you up, and you get your typical mining points from mining Adian Rune rocks as usual. Is that enough to take this region? Well, probably not. It does completely cover your range build though, but it doesn't really address the things that were missing from the starter regions. However, this is like Fremennik Part 2. It is a small region without a ton of content, and for that reason it will likely be one of the most efficient ones for points. So the real question is, can those going for the highest place possible squeeze this area in with Fremennik into the 3 region pick and get the vast majority of the gear and equipment from just one region? Because if you choose small efficient areas for points but you don't have the best gear, it stops being as efficient on all the bosses that you've got to kill. One area though that could fix that is Morytania, which is definitely going to be a very popular one this league's. And this one area is going to provide you with a T-bow, a shadow, a scythe, full inquisitors including the mace, carills, arms, a rapier and the Vernick. For gear alone, this is probably the most complete region, and that's not even all of the items. Because there's also a ton of staffs that you're probably not going to use simply because we're going to have the shadow, but they could be at least useful until we have it. You can also get a whip here, a black mask, G-maul, some rune boots, guardian boots, salve amulet, blood fury, an amulet of rancor, noxious halberd, and I've probably still missed a bunch off. The region allows you to essentially pick 2 other regions with it that aren't that great for gear progression, should that be your strategy. Whilst it doesn't have a ton of skilling here, it does have some very useful methods. The Hallowed Sepulchre, for example, is currently the best training method in the entire game for agility. Thieving from Firewatch is also one of the best thieving methods, and you have the Blood Altar here for training runecrafting too, plus Dialt Essence. But the downside is that it is overall generally not the best for skilling, but boy does it make up for it in combat. So the $1 million question is it better than the Desert and Kourend, where you can also get the T-Bow, Scythe and Shadow, and do you want to pick more than one of these areas that gives the same items? Kourend has a million reasons to pick it and just one not to, but it's probably the most compelling reason for those going for top spot. The Chambers of Zereg probably has the best drops out of all of the raids that give us the mega rares, and the Dex and Arcane Prayer Scrolls alone gives a huge bonus that you simply can't get anywhere else in the game. Ancestrals is the best magic armor in the game too, although if you do pick any area with one of the Desert Treasure 2 bosses which are automatically unlocked this leagues, you do have access to Virtus, which is a very good second best. And whilst the Dragon Hunter crossbow and Kodai wand may not seem that important, in a raid that now gives a Shadow and a T-Bow, it'll probably take a minimum of a few days to get all of the items from the raids, and that's only if we're lucky, so these 2 items will be huge upgrades if we get them before the mega rares. Depending on the combat masteries, which are the new combat relics in effect, Dragon Claws could be very useful, and a very viable strategy in leagues is to Dragon Claw spec a boss and kill it or almost kill it, finish it off, then home teleport, and then use Last Recall to come straight back with full special energy, and then you just rinse and repeat it. The Elder Maul here also gives us a huge DPS increase at some bosses, and it's easy to forget how good it is just because a lot of the bosses that have been released lately haven't been that good for it. It's insane how much the rest of Kourend has to offer too. A farming guild, a woodcutting guild, a way to train prayer, stealing artifacts, which I've just done a video on, and when combined with fletching or enchanting bolts is one of the fastest training methods in the entire game. 2-tick fishing here in Poor Piscarillis is the fastest fishing method too. Our Cursed Library gives you a way to train rune crafting and probably gives you points at the same time. It has the Blast Mine, Tithe Farm is a way to train farming even if you don't have seeds. The Blood Altar lets you train high-level rune crafting. This Slaymaster gives you Brimstone Keys, which reward us with a ton of useful supplies. It has the Alchemical Hydra, which drops a ring that's decent for all combat styles, one of the hardest slots to fill. I mean, there's just so much here, it would take me an hour to go through Kourend, but ironically, that's also its downfall for a lot of players. It has the most content in all of the regions, and that means the tasks are more spread out than anywhere else. So as a comparison, whereas a small area like Fremennik, last year we got 1,640 points for essentially killing the Dagonoth Kings 300 times. Here you get just 440 points for killing 1,500 Lizardman Shamans. The content is more spread out and so are the points, and it probably makes it the hardest region to decide on, because it has so many positives but the biggest negative in leagues. Thankfully, this time Kanderin will be without some of the worst tasks in leagues, as Mod Arcane has confirmed that they're going to remove the Chomper Bird kills and the Monkey Backpack tasks, or at least reducing the amount. So without those, is it worth taking? Well, the first thing it gives you is Zenyte Jewelry, and since we can train crafting so easily this league, you will have a Torture, a Tormented Bracelet, and an Anguish really quickly if you pick this region. It also has the best mage and range training spots in the entire game, although you would have to unlock the desert for ancients and get the chins to range with. Maniacal Monkeys also provide the fastest XP for hunter and fletching when combined at the same time, fletching darts in between catching them. The Kraken gives us one of the most useful magic weapons in the entire game until we can unlock the Shadow, cheap but very effective. Plus, this is the only region that gives us access to the Occult, which even after its nerf still gives a huge 5% magic damage boost. The Fishing Guild is located here, Myths Guild gives us the best cooking spot, as well as access to dragons for prey. Barbarian Fishing is also some of the best fishing XP that you can get, and the Runecrafting Altar here allows you to train rune crafting all the way up to 99. It has the Wrath Altar that allows you to make Wrath runes. There's a ton of agility courses as well as hunter areas, but by far the biggest upgrade here is something very simple, and that's Piety. Without this region, you'll be missing on the 8% strength and the 5% attack that this prayer gives you over ultimate strength and incredible reflexes, and that's kind of the best part about leagues. We can't have everything that we want. Overall, the region does feel a little bit underwhelming, but it's only when you have other regions that have things like 3 mega rares in them, but don't write it off completely. It's a pretty good first region pick, and most content can be done at a pretty low level, and combined with Fremennik and either the desert or Kourend, you will have a pretty insane mage build. The Shadow is generally OP almost everywhere anyway, and with all the league's boosts that we get, it only amplifies it more. Last but definitely not least is Asgarnia, and the region that I always just want to pick. There's something therapeutic about smashing the living hell out of the God Wars dungeon bosses, and all the gear that you get here is good too. The bandos and armour gear that you get is pretty much good enough for anything that you want to do anyway, before you even take into account Torva, and you can get those sets pretty quickly because the bosses aren't that difficult. The Whisperer is here too, and that gets you the second best mage set as well, giving you a full set for every different combat style. We also have Cerberus in the region too, giving us the best items in what's another difficult slot to fill, the boot slot. You can get Prims, Pegasians and Eternal boots, although you will have to unlock the desert to get Infinity boots first to upgrade to Eternal. Without the region, you won't have access to the Dragon Defender either, and whilst we are likely to have a scythe at some point, it probably won't be for a while. Plus, the scythe isn't very good against creatures with decent defensive stats, or on many Slayer tasks, since the creatures are typically smaller. The Slayer is going to take you longer without this area, especially when you factor in that this is the only place to get a dwarf multi-cannon, and this time we don't have to unlock any other region to get it. You also get Void here too, you have access to the Motherlode Mine, the Giant Mole is going to give you easy access to herb seeds for potions and tree seeds for leveling your farming. There's 4 different altars for rune crafting, you get the Rogue's Den outfit for double thieving loot, the Mining Guilds here, and you can get decent weapons like the Staff of the Dead, Armour Crossbow, Zami Spear, and the area is just fun in my opinion, especially when you add in the League's relics. You just go around slapping everything, and its only real downside is it's the type of region that you can live without. It is pretty good for points, and a lot of things here give you points for both killing bosses and the drops they give you similar to Fremennik. But equally, some of the tasks like the 500 God Wars dungeon boss kills are really slow to do. That is, unless you can home telly, then use last recall to come back in to a private instance and therefore avoid the 90-second respawn timer that the boss has. Without that though, the task alone will take you 16 hours to complete. And overall, it's good for points, but it's not the best. The armour is amazing, but when Morytania gives you the Scythe, T-Bow and Shadow plus Barrows, Inquisitors and so on, this is always the region I ask myself, can I live without it? The simple truth is we can't have everything that we want with just 3 region picks, and prayer scrolls, decent boots, offhands and jewellery are limited to certain areas, plus one region that we're going to pick is almost guaranteed to be one of the raid areas. So generally, I always spend weeks trying to decide whether I want this region or not, and then I inevitably pick it anyway, because it's fun, and every time I pick my favourite areas, I get dragon rank, and when I don't, I usually just burn out at some point. And that is probably the most important reason to think of when you pick your regions and leagues. Next video, I'm going to be going through what are the best region combinations, if you're looking for points, a mage build, range or melee, a well balanced area, or an area that's just good for skillers. Whatever you're interested in this leagues, I'll hopefully give you a few ideas on which regions to put together.